Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the festive edition of the Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council Finance, Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee. We are tonight in an unusual configuration. I have nostalgia for the two committee rooms at the old civic offices, but we're in this configuration because there's been a planning inquiry in here today, and I hope we're all happy. I can just about see the smiling face of Councillor Stephen Sweeney, the portfolio holder who is here answering our questions tonight. And we're very lucky to have him because very soon he's got to make his way to the North Pole, where he will instruct all of his elves to be manufacturing and delivering toys for all the children of the world. Item number 1 on tonight's agenda is apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Lawley. She is substituted tonight by Councillor Grocott. Welcome also to Councillor Nicholas Crisp, who was appointed to this committee at the last meeting of full council. Maybe here for a long time, maybe here for a good time, who knows? Are there any other apologies for absence? No. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations to make? No. Item number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting. Can I agree those are an accurate record? Are there any corrections? Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask?
You can. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeking your advice. The minutes on Section 9, the work programme. Obviously, there was quite a debate with regard to the turnover of staff, and there was a vote that was passed by both sides, which was encouraging, that we wanted to see not only the detail of the questionnaire, but we wanted that to be built into the One Council report. Can I ask what notice of this scrutiny committee was actually undertaken? Did we officially write to the leader? Did we write to the portfolio holder and say, look, you're making comments in the report? It talks about significant progress with the staff. There's no data to back that up because they haven't got the data because it's not available yet. So did this committee formally write to the leader or the portfolio holder to say that that report probably shouldn't have been issued as was?
I think the answer to that is no, we didn't write. The portfolio holder was in the room for the last meeting. He is here again today. We are generally, as a scrutiny committee, reliant on the portfolio holder to take material back to Cabinet if we ask. And then if we request, we get Cabinet members to come back here and to answer any questions that we've put to them. Are you happy that the minutes are accurate, or do you want an amendment made to the minutes? I understand that's a matter arising, but if you're happy with the minutes, we can vote those through.
To be honest, I think the resolve that the work programme be discussed isn't what we actually asked for. It's less than what we actually asked for. So I'm not quite sure it is accurate.
Can I invite any officers who have knowledge of it? Yes, and also the portfolio holder if you would like to. My recollection is that there have been a couple of meetings in recent times where the audio on the recording has been very difficult for the minute taker to transcribe, and therefore on occasion the minutes may not reflect fully what was discussed. But of course it is important that when we agree minutes, we're agreeing something as a summary of what we actually decided. Sarah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so if I recall correctly from the last meeting, there was going to be a report on the whole progress of the One Council and that cessation for that piece of work. There was a discussion around actually waiting for that report to include the staff consultation results, wasn't there? Which we have kind of just completed. Well, the closing date is just occurred. So the staff have actually fed back their thoughts. We're just in the process of digesting what those surveys actually say at the moment. So when that's been completed, and hopefully on the next meeting when we've got the One Council report, any survey results can be fed into that report. I think that's what we agreed at last meeting, wasn't it? That you wanted those staff surveys, the results of that staff survey to be included in that One Council report.
Through you, Chair. Absolutely. But the detail we're missing out here is we wanted that in the report that went to Cabinet. And it wasn't. There was 3 paragraphs about staff engagement in the One Council report. One of those was about the previous year's data. The only 2 paragraphs basically say that how wonderful, like I say, a quote, they've made significant progress when they can't possibly know that. And what I'm saying is when we fed back to single Councillor Sweeney out, because I thought it'd go through officers, if I'm really honest, that what was said at Cabinet then, was it fed back that we'd asked for something in particular during that meeting? Because it doesn't feel like it was.
I can assure you that because the HR manager was sitting on this meeting, wasn't she, on the day, and I was talking to her the following day, and she was well sort of aware of what he wanted, and she was working on it. I mean, we'll happily chase her up again, but she wasn't ignoring it. She was well aware of what he wants.
Well, sorry, Chair. I don't think she was by the sound of it, because we wanted the detail to be included in the Cabinet report, not the report that came back to us in January, would it be? Yeah. What we didn't want was that the Cabinet, an officer actually, the officers wrote the report, has said how wonderful and how successful he'd been with the staff, when there's literally no way for him to know that. One, he'd only just walked in the building, and there wasn't the data to back up that paragraph in the report. And that's, I understand that we will get the report, our revised report by the sound of it, which is fine. But the minutes, from my recollection of it, we asked for that data to be put into that report, and it hasn't been. That's fine.
I'll say for my part, my recollection is that we certainly asked that the One Council report that was going to come to this meeting be delayed until the next meeting, because we as a scrutiny committee wanted to see both that and some outcomes of the staff survey and a bespoke report put together that gives us the proper context to understand it. I don't think we are entitled to require that Cabinet look at something. So while members of this committee may have said it would be helpful for Cabinet to see that as well, we can't tell them what to put on their agenda. I can go to Cabinet meetings and say to them, you should consider this, but I didn't feel that was necessary in this case. So when we receive our report at our next meeting in January, a copy of that report can go to Cabinet. Whether they choose to put it on their agenda or not will be up to them, but it will be stuff that they've mainly already seen, won't it? They've already seen the One Council update that officers prepared. I understand members wanted to be sure that Cabinet would consider the outcome of the staff survey. But again, I remember an officer saying to us at our last meeting, while there might not be any data to suggest, or not written down, collated to suggest that progress is being made, progress in practice on the ground is being made. And if we wanted to ask our officers or our portfolio holders some more questions about that in January, it would be very appropriate. For the purpose of the minutes, can we look then, so under item 9, the work programme, the final bit where it says resolved, as an amendment, instead of saying that the work programme be discussed, we should have the minute to say that the work programme be adjusted to say that this committee will receive at its January meeting both an update on the One Council programme and the thoughts of the executive and officers on the staff survey process, because all of that taken together is what we asked for. That's what our minutes should reflect that we asked for. And then, of course, if we feel strongly in January that Cabinet need to see both that report and also our thoughts on it, at that point, we will ask Councillor Sweeney or whichever portfolio holder is gracing us with their presence in January to take it back to Cabinet. And I would be happy to attend Cabinet, as is my constitutional responsibility, if the committee so wished. Is that okay?
One final thing. I absolutely agree, and I absolutely accept that. The scrutiny committees have to have the confidence that they will be listened to. This isn't just, we're not here to just tick boxes. And that night, actually, it was great because there was a unity in the room that we we try and do something and it just doesn't feel like we have been listened to. But if we can have another bite at the cherry for the next cabinet meeting, that'd be great. Thank you.
I think that we can. And in practice, if that data was available for cabinet that's already met this week, it would be available for us now at our meeting. So all of that material has to still be done. Well, the cabinet is entitled to take whatever reports it wishes. And I'm glad that they're having more reports rather than fewer, I suppose. I would not characterise the report as half-baked, but I'm sure that the portfolio holder will feed that back to the leader, whose portfolio I think that particular report would fall under. So with that one change, are we okay to agree the minutes as an accurate record? Thanks very much. We'll move on. Item number 4, then, the first substantive item is the first draft savings proposals, 2025-26. I will invite the portfolio holder to introduce those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very much the first draft savings proposals, not the final finished thing. I've got a little bit of a spiel which I'm going to read out. This report presents the refreshed medium-term financial strategy, including the first draft proposals being considered to balance the 25-26 revenue budget and the proposed capital programme for 25-26 to 27-28. Savings and funding strategies have been identified to address a 1.453 million budget gap for 25-26 via a vigorous efficiency board process and have been agreed with managers as being both feasible and sustainable. A significantly below inflation council tax increase of 1.99% per Band D property is again proposed. This amounts to 10 pence a week or less for 95% of the households within the borough, i.e. those residents living in Band A, B, C, D and E properties. The savings identified enable a continued contribution of £250,000 to the Borough Growth Fund. This will continue to enable investment in the Council's priorities, including significant investment in God, I completely lost now. Where was I? Significant investment in boosting the sustainability environment within the borough and supporting development of the town centre. The capital programme for 25-26 to 27-28 is based on new schemes which are vital to ensure continued service delivery and assisting the council to achieve its corporate and service objectives as set out in the council plan. These schemes total 94.604 million, of which 15.6 million relates to 25-26. This includes schemes to regenerate the town centres, including schemes partially funded from major investment into the borough successfully secured via the Town Deals Fund for both Newcastle and Kidsgrove. Delivering the capital programme for 25-26 will require prudential borrowing to be undertaken. The impact of borrowing is included in the MTFS. The draft proposals will assist in formulating a financially robust budget for the council for 25-26, continue to ensure the council's financial sustainability whilst also protecting the services that our residents value. And that's my opening remarks. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney. Would anyone like to start? The recommendations on the report are 1 through 6, so there's quite a few of them. We are noting it, but we're noting quite a few different things. This is a very early stage in the process, but these, as the portfolio said, are the first draft of the savings. I should say that there are other districts that are in a less happy position. There is one in Staffordshire, won't mention it, but it rhymes without a space, and they are consulting at this point on closing their local museum, on closing their local theatre. There are huge cuts coming down the line and larger tax rises. So bearing in mind that we are every year making economies, what are people's thoughts on these? And of course, at this stage of the year, what I normally say is, does anybody have any extra suggestions? Because I'm certain that the executive would like to know what else they could look at in terms of savings, because every little will help. Does anybody have any questions on the report or for the portfolio holder or indeed for our officers? Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the funding strategy here, obviously, annual leave purchase scheme. Are we quite confident that staff want to put £15,000 out of their own money into getting actual annual off? The other thing I'm looking at here, to be honest with you, Chair, is obviously community centres and different things. Actually, in this case, it's actually parish councils. The £20,000 there. Obviously, a lot of parish councils are small and dependent on these kind of money. So, how is this going to affect them?
The first thing really is the one about buying leave, and it's not a massive amount of money, but I think say you've just got married or something and you want a really good honeymoon and go to, I don't know, Australia for a month or something like that, and you haven't got enough leave, as an opportunity to buy some. I think it's a reasonable idea, and the officer sitting next to me is happy to support it, that it's realistic, and I think it's quite interesting. We have a system in the council that you can sell leave, go the other way, but they can only do that for a week. You're going to carry a week's leave over, sort of thing. But I think it's quite an interesting idea, and I'm not too sure there won't be a decent take up on it. If you want to have, I have unpaid leave, you pay for it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. As to the other thing, we had an account, and it's got a name that here we go. It's called the Council Tax Support Grant, which I believe is not ring fenced. It goes out to it's £30,000, and people, parish councils, town councils, things like that.
Councillor Tagg, could I ask you to place your device on silent?
Okay, get Drew Boy do it for you, John. He can do it. Yeah. Anyway, go out, and there's £30,000. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be for people who can't pay the council tax, but it's not ring fenced, and we find that it's just another funding stream for parish councils and town councils. So we reduced it by 20,000, leaving 10,000, and that 10,000 has got to be bid for. So for a little parish council, take Kidsgrove for example. Kidsgrove's got 340,000, £254,000 in the bank, but some parish councils haven't got very much at all. Then they might want a little scheme. So it's not ring fenced for paying council tax. So they might come back to us and say, yeah, we could have, could we have some money for, I don't know, putting new flower beds and something like that. That's what it's for. And we'll see how it goes. You got anything to add on that, sir? So, okay.
Are there data then to support that it's mainly the smaller parishes that are making use of it, or is that just our office's understanding of who is using it? Because I think that's an important point that Councillor Grocott raised, which is that actually not every parish is big enough to have means of funding its own schemes.
So out of the parishes, as Councillor Sweeney said, originally there was £30,000 that was issued to the parishes. Majority of them kind of get a couple £100, maybe £300 of the actual grant funding. There's sort of 3 parishes that get a larger amount, which is why we've said we will retain £10,000 there. So if it is that they require any of this funding, that they can, apply to or put a bid in for a proportion of this £10,000. But majority, there's, if I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 that have got under £300 a year that they get. So, yeah, like I said, that there's sort of three parishes that tend to get the majority of the money, really. So it's more around a bidding process as to why do they need that funding? What are they going to use that funding for? Because historically, as Councillor Sweeney said, this council tax support grant was to try and help certain families with council tax. We're going back a long, long time. And then because it isn't ring fence, it's just kind of been used for anything and everything over the years. We're just trying to get a bit of a hold of, what are parishes using this money for? Is it being used appropriately within the parishes? Trying to get a little bit more control over that funding. So that's the basis around it.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Grocott?
I mean, the only follow-up is obviously dependent on how big it is or whatever. Some will have more staff than others, so that may help the bids. So that's why I'd like to see maybe something else put in that we may be able to supplement out to all kind of town council and parish councils, if possible. If you can just make a note of that for me, please. Okay.
Sorry, can you just note that any of the parishes can apply for the grant? Just to be clear, it isn't sort of just down to the ones that get the larger amount of this grant at the moment. It's any of them can actually put a bid in for any amount of that £10,000.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, so what I'm saying is that obviously some of them may have 1 clerk, some may have 2 or 3 who are assistants. Obviously, it's going to take more time for them. I just think, as well as the reductions as well, if we could look at if any other grant schemes from government or that, maybe to top up somewhere else if possible. I've no doubt you've probably done that already, but anything we can do would help. Okay.
Okay, I can see, I've seen Councillor Lewis, Councillor Waring and Councillor Stubbs. We'll take them in that order if that's okay. Councillor Lewis then.
So the extra point I was going to make came in with Dave's supplementary, so I'm fine.
Brilliant. Councillor Waring.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think what we were hoping for was a little bit more clarity on the type of things that we can apply for funding. Kidsgrove Town Council loses £13,000 as a result of this change. And I mean, if I'm honest, we've been expecting it for years, so it doesn't come as any surprise. And I'm sure Councillor Stubbs will remember when we had this report that was done into the whole issue. It used to be 4 times what it is. I think it's down to 25% now of what it originally was. And obviously over the course of the years, the town councils absorbed the reductions in the way it sets its precepts, etc. But £13,000 nevertheless makes quite a significant difference. So what we've got to look at is how we can find that funding gap and whether there are any things that we actually spend money on a fairly regular basis that we can apply for a grant. So obviously we now know that it's only a third of what it originally was. But I just wondered if we would be informed as individual councils as to exactly the type of things we can actually look at to apply for funding. Thank you.
Yeah, so we will obviously provide all the parishes with a list of, what we would expect to sort of receive the bids for the funding for, and we'll make sure that is issued well before the end of the financial year.
Okay, Councillor Stubbs.
Can I ask when you wrote to the council to tell them that you were going to do this? Because we've started budget setting.
We emailed parishes out, I think it was about a month ago, to inform them that this would be withdrawn from the 1st of April next year, and that there would be £10,000 left out of the £30,000, and that to consider that whilst you're setting your precepts.
Okay, so basically the Newcastle's top slicing 20,000 from the parish councils. That's right. Because if you're only going to leave the 20,000 saving, that's got to come from, so you're top slicing the 20,000 away. I think it's flippant to say, well, because Kidsgrove's the biggest parish, it can absorb it better than anybody else. There's no, but there's more people and there's more services and there's more demands. That's why it's there. And what Paul said is absolutely right. This isn't £200, £300 that's missing out of the budget. It's 13,000, which is a third of what we pay to Newcastle for the Ranger. So do we lose the Ranger because we can't afford it? I think that it doesn't feel to me like there's been any sort of a negotiation on this, or any sort of, just telling us that it's going to happen. I mean, we've used it in the past, going right back to when we ran the council. It was used for allotments, because that's where actually, before allotments came to the parish councils, which they rightly did, they were here, and that money was passed on. That's why we had the support grant. It wasn't actually to do with paying for council tax. It was things where we offered a service that Newcastle used to offer, and we were taking it over. Now, I've freely admitted that in the past I've done the dip in the pocket, but I didn't take this much away in one swoop, and it feels quite tough on the 3 big councils. They are going to have a big hit in their budgets, and I'm just wondering why there wasn't a consultation done or some sort of negotiation done. Just getting an email a month ago probably doesn't feel right.
If I could come back and just confirm that I didn't say that Kidsgrove could absorb this better than anybody else, because they currently get more money. But in respect of consultation, if I can remind everybody that there is a budget consultation live at the moment, and that is a platform to be able to feedback any comments that anyone may have on this reduction. Again, there is £10,000 left in there, so Kidsgrove is very welcome to place a bid for all that money or £5,000 that money, whatever it is that you currently use the grant for. It isn't that we've withdrawn it completely. We appreciate that, obviously that forms part of your budgets, which is why we tried to indicate as early as we could via an email that, this was going to be a reduction so that you could take it into account when setting your precept. But there is that budget consultation there for any comments and any feedback, which will obviously be reviewed by Cabinet as well.
I accept that. What I don't accept is that it seems now that you're pitting the parish councils against each other. Well, you are. If it's, are you expecting only one council to bid for it? Because at that point, then you're pitting the parish councils against each other. That's what happened previously on national level, and it shouldn't happen on a parish level. It just shouldn't. But I'll leave it to
I won't ask our officer to reply to that. Councillor Stubbs has made his view clear.
I'll ask Councillor Stubbs' question.
If the portfolio holder would like to respond, he is
I'd
we are holding accountable to
Stubbs' question if I can. Just general information. Really.
All right, we're gonna have to adjourn if we won't talk one at a time. Thank you, Councillor Stubbs. I will ask the portfolio holder to speak. If he asks a question, Councillor Stubbs is quite right. He's at liberty not to respond to it if he doesn't want to.
He's more than welcome not to respond to it. I just wonder if he, I don't live in a parish area. I never have done. What sort of things does the Kidsgrove Town Council actually do? What's it responsible for? So genuine questions. I don't know. So I don't live.
Well, to be honest, it's quite ignorant of the portfolio not to know what parishes within his borough actually do. The main expenditure that we have is obviously the Kidsgrove Ranger, which is picking up work that actually hasn't been done by this borough council for the last few years, and we have to use 6 years. So we've had to use our money to do that. That's the main expenditure. We also run a hall, a community venue. There are many, many things that we do, Stephen, that you perhaps should learn about, seeing as, you oversee.
I'm here to learn. So what else do you do? Sorry, what else do you do? You pave the Ranger, which is excellent. No problem with that. I do know about that, of course. And you run the hall, which, again, I know about. And you run the allotments, which I know about. What else does Kidsgrove Town Council do?
Well, Stephen, if you want to swap jobs, I'm more than happy to, to carry on. Okay.
I'll take that as a no then. Thank you for
I think so. There are a number of councillors present tonight on this committee who are either members of a parish council or live in a parish area or are councillors representing a parish area and therefore get quite a demand on their time that's parish related. If members felt it would be useful, we can consider in the round the policy. We can say, I believe it falls under this committee's remit to scrutinise that. So to scrutinise the way in which funding is applied, either as a grant or on a discretionary competitive basis to parishes. Tonight, we're looking at that as a draft saving. It's £30,000. It's going to be £10,000, and it's going to be, well, yes, the amount will be £10,000, and it will be a fund you have to apply competitively for, which means it's a saving of £20,000. So I think the document we're looking at is accurate. My view would be that I accept that, but that we might, once that £10,000 has been applied for and dispersed, want to scrutinise quite how this council is applying that money. And in my view, that you may choose to phrase it that we're pitting parishes against each other. But if there's a competitive tendering process, then there is information about what that money is being spent on. And we're able to say, if we looked at, for example, all of the applications that came in, we can ask our portfolio holder, why did you fund this and not that? Why did you give money to this parish and not that parish? And it may be revealing in other ways. It may tell us that, in fact, lots of parishes have been, I think, as Councillor Waring said, they've been expecting that this amount of money is something of a windfall and will cease in the future. And there will be other parishes that might say, oh, this is absolutely essential. How can we survive without it? So I think we could usefully review that at a later date. It's a £20,000 saving. As our officer mentioned, as part of the budget consultation, if any individual parish councillor, if any parish council, if any resident of a parish wants to make a submission to say that this shouldn't happen, they're welcome to do so. And if members want to make sure that those comments are fed back, I would ask that our portfolio holder does so. So you've heard what Councillor Stubbs has had to say. Would any other member like to comment on that before we move on to other issues? Because I think, this as a minute of this committee, that is a useful conversation to have and to pass on to Cabinet. Councillor Beckley-Smith.
Yeah, it's just Chairman. As Chairman of Betley Parish Council, should I be declaring an interest here?
Lots of councillors might be in that position. No, we're all clear that tonight we're here as borough councils. I've said that many of us have parish responsibilities, but you won't be personally or prejudicially affected by this budget consultation in that respect. So very, very happy to place on the record that you have an interest. I know other councillors do as well. Any further comments on this particular part of the report, or should we move on to something else? Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah, could you just update us, because it's a new one on me, the extended producer responsibility funding? I know there's a little note about it in the appendix. Can you tell us what it is? How's it manifest itself?
So this is a change in legislation where the manufacturers of plastic are now going to have to pay for the removal of plastic and the clearing up of plastic. So central government have allocated a sum of money to each authority to be able to collect and manage and get rid of that. However, it is actually the manufacturer that's paying for that. So the manufacturer will have to pay a certain amount of money depending on however much plastic they produce. Central government have looked at our collection rates and kind of divvied up it was £1.1 billion that came out of the autumn budget, if you recall, a few weeks ago. We've recently had a letter from DEFRA to indicate how much we will get as a local authority. And then it's that amount of money that obviously we will have as funding to help with the additional waste that we may collect.
Just as a rider on that one, is that ring fenced that it has to be spent, or is it a general fund?
No, it's not ring fenced, so we can spend it on whatever we need to.
Thank you. With regard to the £103,000 saving, the merger of the facilities and property functions, I see that it comes under staffing. Is that a wider saving, or how are the numbers reducing in the staffing if they are?
So there's been a retirement in that service area. Somebody has left. There's somebody who wants to go on part-time hours. So it was an opportunity to look at the property team and the facilities management team to sort of see what roles do we actually need now. Our capital programme has been reducing over the last 2 or 3 years in respect of capital projects that we deliver, because we are doing large regeneration projects, which we are being funded for. So it's kind of taking all those things into account, how many staff do we need to deliver what we actually have in the capital programme. We've got the sustainability agenda as well. So we've got different pockets of work that are officers that are working on the sustainability agenda, so making our assets green for future proof. So some of the bits of work have kind of shifted a little bit and changed. So it was an opportunity to do a restructure, and that's where the savings are coming from.
That's one from me, Chair. The 50,000 reduction in the Kisgrove subsidy, was that part of their business plan that would be removed at this point?
So the business plan and the actual agreement between Kisgrove Sports Centre and ourselves was that we would provide any subsidy within the first 5 years should the centre need it, and should they be struggling to generate income. They're actually doing really, really well. They haven't called on the subsidy from us because they're generating enough income. So we currently have some money in a reserve should anything change in the next 2 years that they do need to access any money. This is the amount of money that we would have put into the reserve that we don't need to, because there's sufficient money sat there. There's still some money there if it is that they need to call on it, but this is the money that we would have topped the reserve up with, but they haven't had any or asked any, or everything's really, really well, working really well with them.
I mean, it's not your responsibility. I accept this, but looking at their last sort of 2 or 3 sets of accounts. They still only got sort of one paid member of staff. At some point, they're going to have to, stop depending on volunteers. And I'm just worried that I'm actually I feel much better now that you're saying there's a reserve, because I think that there will come a point where they have to transition, and I think there's going to be a cost with that, and I just hope that they're ready for it. But strictly speaking, it's not your responsibility, and it certainly won't be in 2 years' time. But it's nice to know that there is the reserve there just in case. Thank you.
Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, Mike, that they're doing an absolutely fantastic job at Kidsgrove. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Phenomenal. Are there further questions or comments? Excellent. I recall, Councillor Stubbs, you did at some point within the last week, I think, tweet that members, and it is quite right too, people who live in Kidsgrove and Talkenbutt Lane must participate in the budget consultation. And you did mention that one concern that you had was that money would be taken out of Kidsgrove and transferred to other areas of Newcastle. Have we covered everything you wanted to challenge our portfolio holder on? We're getting there. Okay. I mean, my worry, of course, is that, money is being absolutely, carted out of Kidsgrove and brought to the Westlands, where, of course, we need it. Public services in the Westlands require an incredible quantity of funding. But if we're happy then that we've made every comment that we'd like to make, let me just have a look at the draft resolutions, because now we've amended our minutes today. We'll make the minutes for the next one look good. We've got 6 recommendations, and I think we should include a 7th, which is that we ask Cabinet to consider the comments that we've made tonight. So for the purposes of the minutes, we're moving recommendations 1 through 6. We're noting the draft savings proposals, the MTFS funding gap, surplus funds identified, commencement date of the budget consultation period, mid-year capital estimates, and proposed setting of council tax. And number 7, we ask Cabinet to consider the thoughts that have been shared tonight on this report. We all are happy for that to happen. Brilliant. That concludes that item on the agenda. Next item then is the finance and performance report for the second quarter. Councillor Sweeney to introduce.
Mr. Chairman, this is one of these frustrating things, really. You could do with this meeting being like the week after the end of Q1, couldn't you? Rather than halfway through the next quarter, finished at the end of this month. But this is the report we get every time. I'm glad to say that 82% of the indicators are on target, 70% not. And we've all got the reports in here, so I'm happy to take any questions. Presumably, if I know the chairman, he'll go through all the red ones, which is what he normally does. I feel
entirely usual.
I feel fairly confident.
If no member would like to ask a question on the report, we can move straight on to the performance indicators. I know I sounded off about how great they are at full council, but Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Sarah, if possible, please. So I'm just wondering why there isn't a prudent figure shown within the income to reflect the interest gathered on any unspent capital funds within this report. So obviously we're aware of money interest made from the town deal fund. I'm just wondering why there isn't a figure to sort of reflect that within the report. Thank you.
So if you look at 2.6A, that actually shows how much interest that we've actually received as at the end of Q2, which is £507,000 on the money that we've had or that we've been holding in the bank account in respect of future high street fund and town deal funding. As I said at the last meeting, and I sent an email to Councillor Stubbs about it, I think there was a question about why don't we recognise the interest that we are going to earn as part of the budget. Well, when we set the budget, we have a plan of what that capital expenditure is going to look like, and we expected to spend the majority of that town deal and future high street fund money on those projects allocated within that time, which meant that we wouldn't ordinarily, or how we planned it, would have earned any interest on that, because we would have spent the money. There is 2 elements to this. There's the interest that we earn on the money that we hold in the bank, and then there's also the interest that we don't spend on the borrowing because we haven't undertaken any borrowing. So though that sort of particular figure at the moment is made up of like 2 areas of interest, we are anticipating that we will need to borrow by the end of this financial year. And I know that most meetings I'm kind of saying we're going to borrow soon, we're going to borrow soon, we're going to borrow soon. Obviously our treasury management advisors sort of say if we can afford to internally borrow, which is use our own funds without having to pay borrowing fees to a bank to do that, which is basically what we have been doing. Because obviously we haven't spent as much as we thought we were going to by now, we've managed to accrue some interest, and the interest rate's been quite high, hasn't it, over the last sort of year. So that's why we've actually accumulated that amount of income. You're probably going to be expecting, or you're going to be looking to see if you can find anything in the budget for next year. However, we will be borrowing by that time, so you won't see any income figure in a budget for next year because we will be borrowing. So it doesn't kind of work both ways, as it were. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Sarah. I was looking for a spread, like a table, which is why I missed that. So that's great. Thank you for confirming that. I appreciate it.
Phenomenal. Yes, we're going to consider progress on the town deals of Puget High Streets in a little while, but I think it's correct to say that while we don't plan to have big chunks of government money sitting in our accounts, it has been welcome that's happened. It's been able to save us on borrowing interest costs, and it's generated interest on its own. But also, we've heard as a committee at previous meetings, actually we're making progress. We rocket ahead, perhaps not as fast in Kids Grove as we do in Newcastle, but on the town deals, we're in a much stronger position compared to other authorities that received town deal funding from the last government, and may even face having some of that money clawed back by the new government. Somebody had their hand up over on this side of the room. Was it Councillor Waring? Yeah, Councillor Waring next.
Thanks. Just a quick one. It's just on the comment that Sarah's just made, referring to the interest that will be paid in future years. A significant part of that is actually going to be refunded, though, by the developer, isn't it? Or I was just wondering how that gets treated, because do we put that into a reserve somewhere as a deficit that we expect to get back, or will we actually show that in the accounts and then see it as a windfall later on, you know, when we finally do the deal with the developers?
So we've got 2 parts of the interest that we're going to borrow in respect of. So we've got borrowings for our capital programme, so our capital financing requirements. So this is like our fleet replacement, our property maintenance areas, the car park that we're funding, the Castle car park on the Rycroft. So that they are specific areas that the council will borrow for and we will pay interest for. So that goes through the revenue account. With the capital and centric projects, should we go ahead and we borrow for them, we can capitalise those interest payments. So when capital and centric purchase the asset back offers, they will cover those interest costs as well. So they will be capitalised. So they won't be put into a reserve or anything like that. They'll be treated separately in line with the specific projects. And we as an authority, we can do that.
Okay. Any further questions on the report, or should we? Yes, Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. ID 1.8, I think it's data transactions. We've been told, and the
Sorry, we were looking at the report.
Oh, sorry, are you not moved on? That's fine.
We will now move on to the indicators.
Okay. We've obviously, the Cabinet was informed how wonderful the One Council programme had been, and I'm happy to admit that there have been some positives, but the report obviously points out that we're only reaching 80% of the target for digital transactions. For the One Council really to be as successful as we're led to believe, doesn't that need to be much closer to 90, never mind 100? That's one for you, Councillor Sweeney, really.
This is indicator 1.8A, is it? Yeah, we've jumped over food inspections. We don't have to go back to those. Anyone say, oh, you want to go back to those? That's fantastic. We'll do perhaps almost in order. So 1.8A, total number of digital online transactions. And as you can see, that's a red indicator. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chairman. It's a bit of a mixed bag, is this one? It's sort of you win and you lose. If the website's that good, then it just happens. You don't need to get information on it because it's there. Or you have a brown bin and that becomes a transaction. So, you know what people do, get a brown bin. You want that to go up, but you want the other things to be available for people. So that's come down. So is it good that it's low? Is it good that it's high? It's one of these. It's weird. There's pluses and minuses both sides. But I'll let Vanessa there explain it better than I have, because I didn't explain it very well. I'm aware of that. I know what I meant, but I didn't say it very well.
Thank you. I think with this one, there's probably three aspects to it that perhaps need to bring out. I think the first one is around the target. We have set a very ambitious target this year. We increased it by more than 10%. So I think that's something to bear in mind. The second thing is that when we're looking at the quarterly results, they don't come in equal sort of flows. It tends to be backloaded towards the Q3 and Q4 when we've got the garden subscriptions, and we've got obviously the big billing runs in the new year. So we'll see, when you look historically at some of the other data, you can see there's a much bigger increase in online transactions in the latter half of the year. So just because we're below the target now doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to be. And we are getting people, like Councillor Sweeney said, obviously we did have in the past a lot of general inquiry forms. So if people couldn't find what they needed on the website, they'd upload a form. Now they are getting that information for themselves. And so that's why we've seen a little bit of dip on some of the Jardu forms. But we're seeing a really steady and good increase in terms of people being able to self-serve around things like citizens access, which is for your council tax and benefit claims. And we've seen that's gone up from just over 10,000 in the first year that came in, over 11,000, and it's now over 13,000. So there is that increase in those things. So yeah, it's one to watch, but I think there's those three elements need to be taken into account when we're talking about performance.
For that answer, do you have a follow-up? Okay, we'll move backwards then. Councillor Lewis, do you want to do food inspections?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll direct this to Councillor Sweeney first of all, but I'm happy for you to pass it over if needed. Sorry, so I was just wondering how it is possible to not meet a target for food hygiene inspections when there was only 10 to complete for the month. Worked it out, if it's a 4-week month, that's 2.5 inspections a week. I appreciate, I don't know how much work actually goes into the inspection and the reports, but as there was only one member of staff off and a full month to complete the inspections, how has it been possible to miss the target by such a large amount? Thank you.
On the point out, it's not a month, it's 3 months, it's quarter this is. But I think, again, if I can pass you those things, I think she's got some updated. This is the disadvantage of these reports being 2.5 months out of date. Do you want to give the latest news, Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you. Of the 2 inspections, obviously this report's taking you to the 30th of September. So on the 17th of October, the first one was caught up with, and on the 22nd of October, the second one. So it's really just over 3 weeks after the period that we were able to catch up, but it was down to resources and staffing issues during that period in question.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up. Thanks, Chair. Okay, so with your point, Stephen, 10 inspections and not hitting target over 3 months actually makes it worse than 10 inspections over a month and not being hit because of the extra time. But I would say, what are we looking at to potentially review that? Because again, with that point, with 10 inspections over a 3-month period, is there a way that we can look at potentially reprioritising or facilitating staff usage a little bit better to make sure that we hit the target in the future? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that? Sarah, go ahead.
I think we may have discussed staffing issues in respect of environmental health at this committee before. We are not unique in our lack of staff in our environmental health team at the moment, and it is not through trying to recruit either. There's a national issue with, I think it's following on from COVID, environmental health officers, including food inspection people, are like gold dust. We have been out to various agencies. We've managed to actually now get a couple of agency people in. The service director is constantly looking at the structure of the team and how we can evolve, and whether it's shared working with other authorities or organisations, just really looking outside the box of how we can, deliver the services. And there's a huge amount of work going on, and we are certainly making progress now, as Vanessa said. So, but it's an ongoing piece of work, and we are still looking at those vacant posts.
I think it's fair to say, I've said something along this line before. If you've got a child who wants a job for life, environmental health officer, they'll have a job for life, or an auditor auditing local authorities. You'll have a job for life with that as well, because they're too desperately short of both these trades at the moment. And I don't think I'm exaggerating on that.
If Councillor Lewis would like to have a final say, and then we'll move on.
I just want to say thank you, and I'm glad to see that something positive is going forward. Thanks.
Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the same. Not to be alarmist, and actually I'd much rather be putting this to the head of environmental health. But what's the opportunity cost of not doing these things on time? What if they miss that one inspection that would stop a lot of people being ill? Do we weigh that up within the building? Because that seems, yes, that I suspect, looking at the averages, that the risk is quite low, but it's still a risk.
Absolutely. So we are constantly monitoring that risk, because we are very aware of the consequences if those surveys and tests don't take place, inspection should I say. So our risk register is constantly being reviewed every month, alongside that work of getting those officers in.
Thank you very much. I should say, from a resources perspective, we're reviewing this as part of the key performance indicators. The service itself, being environmental health, falls under a different scrutiny committee's remit. So if members wanted to see a more detailed look at how that service is being offered, I would recommend raising it in another place with a different chair. We'll move on then, if we can. There is a red indicator immediately below the one about food inspections relating to stage 1 complaints processed in time being 20 working days. The target is 85. The number is 83.33. Again, because the numbers involved are very small, it's possible for us to go up and down quite easily. So if so long as nobody wants to ask a question about it, we'll jump over it. We'll go on to the next red indicator, which is 2.6, percentage of complainants informed within the required timescales of any action to be taken about alleged breaches of planning control. Would Councillor Sweeney like to give us a gloss on that?
Councillor Sweeney hasn't got a gloss to put on, I'm afraid, apart from the fact that there's some of the very complex issues that take a great deal of time to sort out, and that's why there's a few of them, but it takes a long time. That's what's causing the problem.
Okay, yeah, there is. I mean, there's text in the action of target, but it's quite a lot of text because it's a complex issue. Councillor Grocott, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Just looking on this, I'm just looking on the reports basically. We do seem to have quite a bit of turnover on planning. I know that's how it works out, unfortunately, of new names and that. Does that actually impact on these actual investigations going on? And if so, can we put something in to implement it being better to try and keep staff attention?
I don't think that's the reason. I think it's just a complicated vista. I mean, the core staff we've got have been here for a good while. There are new staff. There's always new staff in planning. Always, but I don't think that's the problem. Do you, sir? No, they're just complicated. Case takes time.
So the conclusion of the the commentary text within the report is that better case management and senior management overview is now being implemented. Would we expect to be meeting that target when we see the next set of indicators?
I wouldn't go so bold as to say that. I would certainly say we'd expect to improve.
Improving will be great. We'll be up to
Improving's good.
that. Councillor Stubbs.
It's still within priority 1, but it's actually, would you believe, a green indicator. But so 1.14, which is staff turnover. Yes, we've talked about it already tonight. It's showing at 8.46 against a target of 10, but obviously that's a cumulative figure. What is the forecast for that figure for the remainder of the year? Are we aware that that figure, because we won't know with this until it happens, but is there any data within the authority that tells us that actually the turnover is going to be, because it only needs 1.5 member of staff to move, and we're well just under at that point, but two members of staff move on and we're over the target.
It's a green indicator. I'm content to watch it turn red in the next quarter if it's going to happen. Let's so Councillor Sweeney's welcome to answer Councillor Stubbs's question. If
Councillor Sweeney can't answer it, Councillor Sweeney suggests he agrees with you. At the moment, it's green. When it gets to red, then we'll have an answer for you. At the moment, it's
we have noted the comments of the portfolio holder. We set ourselves, so in my head, as an authority, we've got these key performance indicators. So we say to one of them, okay, we'd like to have low staff turnover, because in general, having low staff turnover is a good thing. It's a positive thing. It means that you're building your experience. It means that your staff are happy staying with you. I mean, it could mean lots of things. To me, 10 seems quite arbitrary as a number, but I'm sure that our officers and the administration put a lot of thought into picking it. And in my view, it would be very different if we look at that number next quarter and it says 8.46, 9.46, and if it said 60.46 because the entire workforce has decided no, we all want to work somewhere else now. So there is a difference, yes, that figure will turn red when it goes over 10, if it goes over 10. But we have, as a committee, we've done a couple of deep dives in this cycle into staff turnover, and we've not uncovered terrible things. We may disagree on this, but I've been showing the committee, we've looked into it, we've considered it, and it turns out that actually things are okay. And when we benchmark against people we should be benchmarking against, we're doing okay. But if, as you say, if that figure turns red, then you can ask a sterner version of the same question of the portfolio holder at the next meeting. Because yes, if the number goes higher, if it goes significantly higher, that is an indication that things could be bad. But it's not like some of the others where, we're not inspecting food establishments on time. That could have a particular health effect. Whereas one member of staff choosing to change their job this year instead of next year, I don't know whether that's, goodness me, it has just gone dark, hasn't it? I'm not I'm having a stroke. Oh Lord, I've become very excited about staff turnover, as indeed we should be. Go on, let's move on. We've done that one. Where did we get to? Because we've jumped back and forth a little bit on these, and I don't want to hold people up. But okay, apologies, Councillor. I've completely lost my grip on this. Oh Lord. Is that the last one? I think it might be, because I don't have any that are on my. Which one? That was the last red one. Fantastic. I'm recalling what I said at full council, which is that in terms of environmental cleanliness, we've achieved what you may consider a clean sweep, which is that there is a page in this report that has 100 for everything, and they're all under Councillor Hutchinson's portfolio. But if you'd like to take credit for that, Councillor Sweeney, feel free.
No, I'm not like that, Councillor. What I would say, though, and this is something I feel very passionate about, the One Council process for this authority has been absolutely brilliant. I think for a £1.2 million investment, we save, I think it's 1.18 million a year forever. And I think it's been an absolutely superb process. I think we've carried the staff with us. And I think it's laid the foundations for such a successful council we've got now. And I have nothing but admiration for it. I think it's a superb process. Thank you.
There's a few people who'd like to respond to that. I saw Councillor Parker first, then Councillor Stubbs, and then Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point on you said about your indicators. The fact that the next finance assets performance scrutiny will be meeting in approximately 6 weeks' time. Through you, Chair, could we ask the officers or whoever is involved with those 3 red indicators if they could try and do something with them in the short amount of time that we have? Because it is only a short amount of time. In 6 weeks, it's not going to be a big, especially with the Christmas period as well. That takes 2 weeks out. So theoretically, they've got 4 weeks. Thanks, Chair.
Are we asking them to come back to us with answers to these questions, or are we just asking them to take action?
Just to, give a boost as we try and work on those, because like I said, it's a short amount of time between this meeting and the next one.
One issue is that the figures themselves are quite out of date now, because we are looking at the end of Q2 and we're now approaching the end of Q3. And I think it's more often like that than it is the other way around, where we're getting red hot figures. I know that Cabinet generally sees them before we do. Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, just pointing out, Councillor Parker, that the next one's due the end of December. So it's sort of 2.5 weeks away and you'll get the latest one then.
You are 2.5 weeks to inspect all the food premises. Bearing it in mind as a career choice, I might retrain. Councillor Stubbs, you were next.
To really support the staff more than anything, this committee, rightly or wrongly, and I think rightly in my case, is set up really to cover the budgets, and that's why our meetings fall when they do. I think you're right, Councillor Sweeney, it'd be great if we could pick these up at the right time, but that cycle doesn't fit in with the budget cycle, and I know which we really should be concentrating on more. And getting the budget right is absolutely number one, I think. And I think that's why for the last 10 years that I've been here, the cycle's been pretty set. Thank you.
No disagreement from me, Councillor Sweeney.
Sorry, Councillor. One thing I will say is I'm in this place every day, and I keep my ear to the ground and pick things up. And I generally do not pick up an unhappy workforce in this building. I really, really don't. I can't talk about the depot because I'm not in the depot, but up here, no, I do not pick people muttering and, I don't see it at all. And I've worked in offices all my life, and I do not pick an unhappy workforce up when I'm in this office. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think the workforce in this room, this committee, are chill, happy. The vibes are great. Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, it's more of a comment than anything. I just think, especially for priority 3, as the fact that they've all been met, it's a complete testimony to the staff and the hard work. So I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think overall, since I've been on this committee last year, just the improvement from last year to this year has been quite significant overall. So I just think it's fantastic that the hard work is being recognised as much as we are picking at certain points. I think it's absolutely fantastic overall.
I think inevitably we will scrutinise the things that fall short, and that's what those indicators help us to do. I'm also impressed with the One Council programme, and I'm impressed with the changes that have been made to the way in which this data is presented to us and to Cabinet, because it's made it easier for us to. If anybody remembers the years of arguing about smiley faces, they are well in the past. So thanks very much to members for their comments. If there are no further comments on those report and indicators, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the Town Deal and Future High Streets Fund update. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. I don't want to really dip into this too much because I think it'll, everything's written down in the papers anyway, and well written as well. Mr. McKenney's at a conference at the moment, so he can't attend. So we've got Mrs. Burgess here to doing it, who's probably knows more about it than I do, really. And she's willing to take any questions off anybody. But I don't want to just go through what's on the report. It's a well-written report. It's very clear. And I think it's what Councillor Holland said about this authority has made great efforts to get this money out through the door. The High Street Fund money has almost all gone. There's one screen left, and that money's gone. We spent it. It's all gone, and we're well on the way with the other 2. And I think the government, you get this money and you expect to use it and use it as quickly as you can for the benefit of the people sitting in the bank. You might as well get it out and get it working for us. And I think we've done that. But as to questions on individual things, I look forward to your questions, and I think I know what they're going to be.
We could feed the minutes of this committee into an artificial intelligence engine. We could generate the next 12 months of meetings without having to go through the process of having them. But thank you very much for the indication. Thanks to our officer for attending to answer any questions. Again, it's a good report. It comes back. It's a periodic one. Especially good to see, for example, the work that's ongoing at York Place. It was nice to see the hoardings go up and the activities now happening on site, and also that they put the remembrance poppy up on the hoardings. So that was a nice touch. I know Councillor Tagg was responsible for that. Councillor Tagg Jr., the leader. Does anybody have any questions on the report or on the process, which we could put to our officer? Councillor Stubbs, do you want to go first? Look around the room, but I think you're on point for this one again.
Okay. We've talked about how well written the report is. I think the population of Kisgrove would strongly disagree. The word count for that report tonight was 2,000 words. The word count for the Kisgrove section was 8% of that. I don't think that's acceptable. My residents don't think that's acceptable. Nobody is downplaying the successes. So from a Kisgrove point of view, the money being spent on the sports centre is well regarded. I'm not so sure the same is thought of the money being spent in Chatley Valley. There's an argument to be had there, but it's done, it's spent. If anybody can show me tangible economic benefits in Kisgrove right now due to that money, then I'd be really impressed. Maybe there's a couple of security guards working up there still. My questions, though, are Kisgrove train station, that's obviously been delayed. Who didn't think, and I sat on this board for a small amount of time, who didn't think that they'd find either coal or shafts under that area? Nobody can say that they didn't know that, because about 3 years before, when they built the bridge, they had to pin it because of coal and the shafts. So why wasn't that added into the budget to start with? Yeah.
One, because I know it's a major sore point for you. The money for the borough and the county we put in on the road infrastructure, the way these things work, and then opens the site up. You go down towards Stafford and you see on the right hand side there's huge roadworks being done to open that whole site up. That's the way it works. I absolutely guarantee to you, though, that these 1,800 jobs, whatever it's going to be, there will not be a bar of people from Kisgrove applying for them. I promise you, there won't be like a Berlin Wall, so nobody in Kisgrove can apply for these jobs. It won't happen, I promise you. Those jobs will be available. I know it's not in Kisgrove, it's the other side of the road, I accept that. But the idea, I think, that you're alluding to, that some of those jobs there are just going to be for everybody else, not people at Kisgrove, I think you're wrong. I think you're misguided. We've had this discussion many times before, and I've brought up the county council before. I've never actually name checked you, but I've mentioned a certain council who doesn't think it's a very good idea. I think it's an excellent idea personally. As for the developments on it, it's a private company. We'll see how they get on. Particularly detailed questions about the Kisgrove element of the town deal. That's why Mrs. Burgess is here. So I'm sure she'll enjoy taking your questions.
With regard to the coal mining issue at Kisgrove Railway Station, it was always known that there was coal mining issues on that property. The guidance that we had initially was that a rather simpler remediation proposal called a geogrid would be suitable for the type of works that we want to do, which for a substantial part are creating an extra car parking facility in addition to upgrading the station building. When that went for a detailed review with the Network Rail mining specialists, they decided that they would take a rather more cautious approach, and they wanted a rather more complicated and extensive intervention rather than the Great geogrid. And in order to calculate what's needed, we need to do a series of ground investigation works, which do involve drilling quite deep holes to establish how stable those underground mining areas are.
The reason that Network Rail are being so cautious is because of the risk to the West Coast Main Line, and any slight movement in that would cause obviously significant economic issues, not just in Kidsgrove, but over a rather wider area. The other change that has happened with regards to the coal mining risks is a change to the requirement of a coal authority permit in order to take those ground investigation works forward. There is a significantly longer period of indemnity that we have to give to the coal authority than when the bridge works were undertaken. And there are potential financial consequences to that if we don't do this in a correct way, both for the council and for East Midlands Railway and for Network Rail.
Thank you for that answer. Councillor Stubbs, would you like to follow up?
So all that, if I took that at face value, which I have no reason not to, on several occasions, members of this administration and in another chamber not too far away from here, it's been mentioned that the previous government promised that the shortfall would be made up of funding from the savings due to what's it called?
HS2.
HS2. Yeah, HS2. And yet I've never seen a document proving that. Can that document be made available? I know for a fact that one of the local MPs has asked for it, because both the Newcastle and the Stoke North MPs are both willing to support that, but they're not going to say something that they haven't got proof of. And I know that somebody's asked for that letter and it's not been provided. So I suppose I'm asking, what proof have we got that that money was promised? Was it a verbal promise, which means nothing, or was it actually made in writing? Thank you, Chair.
You got one idea.
Yeah.
Welcome to answer, which promise there is an answer.
The initial reference document for the promise of additional funding from the cancellation of HS2 was the Network North document, which is a publicly available document. Kidsgrove was specifically mentioned in that document for a railway station that was in need of investment alongside some of the other local ones that are in Stoke-on-Trent.
Councillor Stubbs?
Did it have a figure attached to that, or was it for the Staffordshire stations, or was it just a name on a list?
There wasn't a figure in the Network North, the Rail North document, no.
Oh, sorry, big bun.
Thank you for turning your microphone off, Councillor Sweeney. Here we are. This is the Network North document. Paragraph 62. We will provide an unprecedented uplift in funding for 13 local authorities in the Midlands. For the first time, we will deliver long-term settlements for councils from Lincolnshire to Rutland, blah, blah, blah. This 2.2 billion investment will transform transport by funding schemes such as refurbishment of stations in Longport and Kidsgrove. So the total pot is 2.2 billion, and the only two places that are named as benefiting from that are both relatively close to us. That, I think, constitutes the sum total of the written element of the previous government's promise. Happily, we now have a new government, and if our MPs would be so minded, they can lean on paragraph 62 of Network North when they're pushing for it. The question, and I completely agree with Councillor Stubbs that it is frustrating that we don't move faster, because we always want to move faster. We always want to deliver everything we say we're going to deliver really fast. But what I hear tonight, and what I heard the last time we had this conversation at a previous meeting, is that it's not us that's holding things back. It happens to be the very large national bodies like UK Coal Authority, like Network Rail, who are not accountable to us and who are barely accountable to Parliament through their respective departments in government. That hasn't changed, I don't think. And therefore, are we asking something of our administration here, or are we really saying, gosh, I wish somebody nationally would pull their finger out? You know, if it's an abundance of caution at Network Rail that is holding the project back, that's not our fault. If it's the fact that the coal authority requires greater or longer indemnity, that again is not our fault. It seems to me that we're delivering as fast as we can, and unless you have a different view, Councillor Stubbs.
If you indulge me, Chair, I will wrap it up. Canal Pathways, absolutely delighted that's going to be done. My only question is, why is it taking this long? It's a relatively small project. It could have started probably 18 months ago. Why wasn't that signed off and allowed to move forward? And then a much wider question, the shared service hub. So it mentions changes in the report. When were those changes floated originally? Why weren't local members and indeed all members made aware of those? I only found out about them during a meeting last week, which was great because it came from an update on the town board, but this hasn't suddenly come into being. There's land about to be purchased, businesses about to move, and then now the whole thing's up in the air that we might be having shared sites on the King's School. We might have buildings X, Y, and Z. Where are we actually with this? Because to wrap it up, Chair, and this, I've been told on several occasions, and I really hope it's true, we are going to spend this money, we're not sending anything back, but what I'm hearing tonight, not through the fault of the administration, that in 18 months' time, when this funding has to be spent or whatever it is, and somebody will tell me the exact date, there is no plan at the moment, or I'm not aware of a plan, and I hope there is one, to guarantee that this 16.9 million is going to be spent within the parish. No plan at all. Because if you are right, and I take the Chair's point, that it might not be something to do with the administration, that deadline is still there. Or are there conversations going on with the government to say, we can't meet this deadline, and it's not our fault, it's X, Y, and Z? Are those conversations being had now? Because if they're not, one, why not? And two, can they please start? Because if we've promised this best part of 17 million to the residents and we spend, what, 6.91 we spent at the moment, then that's going to be a plague on all our houses. And we won't be able to dip our shoulders and say it's the National Coal Board's fault because nobody will believe us. Thank you, Chair.
I'll invite our officer to respond if she'd like to do so, and then I can see Councillor Waring indicating.
Just taking the responses sequentially. On the canal towpath, Canal and River Trust are responsible for delivering that issue. There was a change of personnel which has caused some problems with delivery of that scheme. However, those works have now been tendered and they will be starting on site in January. On the funding profile issue, on this most recent performance return that we've had to return to government, councils have been invited to indicate if they wish to or they need to spend past the current March 2026 deadline. We have indicated for both Newcastle and Kidsgrove that there are some projects where we would want to take that option. And we are doing that in order to give us sufficient, well-planned consideration of what the correct future is for those projects.
One final point from Councillor Stubbs, and then we'll move on to Councillor Waring.
After that, if, and it's a big if, this money from the HS2 allocation fails to materialise, what's plan B?
The project group already has contingency plans that if the funding doesn't come forward, then we will make best use of the money that we can to make those improvements within the existing footprint of the railway station and the car park. We are continuing to lobby with both the local MP and Staffordshire County Council, who are hopefully expecting an allocation of something called local transport funding that should any funds become available, that Kidsgrove is top priority.
That's as close as we're going to get to an answer to your questions tonight, Councillor Stubbs. If anybody happens to have the ear of one of our local MPs, it is worth reminding them. You can show the Network North document. What I would say, so Network North, as people will remember, was the announcement. It was, we're not going to do HS2. Here is a whole portfolio of stuff we're going to do instead. And some of those promises have already been, it's been confirmed by the current government that they will not hold to them. I quoted from paragraph 62. Paragraph 63 talks about fully funding several Restoring Your Railways projects, which it's now been confirmed will not go ahead in North Staffordshire, including a station at Mere and the Stoke-to-Leek line. So clearly the Department for Transport has already made changes to what the previous government intended to do with that money. That said, there was a huge amount of it because HS2 had become an extremely expensive project. So I think it is well worth our MPs continuing to be engaged on that. Councillor Waring, you were next.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, obviously Elaine knows much more detail about the discussions with the government bodies than I do. But from the meetings that I've been to in relation to the railway station and so on, I think the view is that ideally that funding would come from the government, but what would actually happen is once the ground investigation work's done, it would be possible then to see where the cost would be involved. And then it's a case of scaling it down until you reach the point at which you hit the budget, I think. Now, that might end up being a big disappointment for us. It may not. We don't really know, because until that work's carried out, we don't know how much of a limit that places on, East Midlands Rail. So there've been a lot of discussions about that, but I think at the moment the people who are in charge of that are still hopeful that it's going to get done. But we'll have to wait and see. In relation to the Canal and River Trust, obviously Elaine's had the discussions with them, but I think the view that we had was that it was a relatively short programme, and whilst ideally it should have been done earlier, the fact that there's been some slippage on the timescales, because it is something that we do ask about quite frequently to see where it is. The slippage on the timescales, I don't think will actually impact on the March 26th deadline. As far as the shared service hub and the public realm improvements, the latest view that we have at the moment is that the public realm work can be done by March 26. So any notification to the government at the moment is just a backstop. It's just a safety precaution, and the same would apply to any changes to the shared service hub works and things like that. It's still within the programme to be completed by March 26. Obviously, it's prudent to notify the government just in case anything happens, but at all times the view has been that it's important that rather than just do something because we need to do it within the timescale, that we always monitor how we can spend the money in the best way for the residents of Kidsgrove. And at this moment in time, obviously the railway station is a bit of a dark horse, but the other projects, as far as I'm aware, it should be possible to complete them within the timescale.
There we go. That was a statement and not a question, so we don't require a response. But Councillor Stubbs, you did say twice now that you were bringing it to a conclusion. Go right ahead.
Just to ask the officer, sorry, you didn't mention the shared services hub. Your view of the world on that?
The way forward for the shared service hub is currently being reviewed by a subgroup of the Towndale board, and the Towndale board will be meeting in January to conclude on what they think is the preferred way forward for that. The subgroup will be meeting next week to review a number of proposals. What we have to do is to make sure those proposals are in line with what was set out in the town investment prospectus, and also will meet the requirements of government for certain outcomes and outputs to be delivered. So this is why I referenced we need to do it in a planned way rather than panicking to spend the money because we've got a deadline to hit. We're trying to just make sure that we do get best value out of that.
Does that sound reasonable to you, Councillor Stubbs? We'll move on. There we are. That's almost as good. In relation to the train station, for whatever you do, for goodness sake, don't let the Treasury find out that there is a plan B and that the Town Deal Board or the working group would consider scaling it back, because we really want them to make good on the promise that the previous government made. We do learn an awful lot about Kidsgrove at this committee. Does anybody have any comments to make on any other element of the report? Fair enough. I will conclude by saying that I did. Oh, sorry, Councillor Grocott. Let's move it on to that.
Sorry, Chair, just a couple of quick ones actually. More regarding the hotel development actually, as Phil, Councillor Sweeney or whatever. Obviously, Councillor Sancho take it on, which is great. Have we got any preferred kind of interest whether somebody may take it over? Have been asked by a few local hoteliers that may be of interest. And the second one is regarding Chesterton. The second one there, basically, obviously, Aspire doing a great job there. Obviously, we're there when we were doing, not last Thursday, but the Thursday before. A lot of people asking, have they seen Bradwell about Section 106 money, how we might be able to get that to improve the parks and different things like that. So has that money been assured, or is anything we can do there to improve facilities? Okay.
What was the Bradwell? You said about Bradwell then, Dave, what's that? You mentioned Bradwell, what was that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's obviously Bradwell have got £493,000 from and all that.
Yeah,
so they've seen that, and they're saying, well, when's Chesterton going to have that same kind of idea or same kind of principle or some money coming in? So that's why I'm looking at the Section 106, how that might work out.
The answer is I don't know, but I would assume there's Section 106 money for the Chesterton one. I'm very surprised that there wasn't. And it's got its fence on the local area, which is where the Bradwell comes from Night Way, isn't it? That one's come from. And you don't need more than that, do you? No, but as the actual, what the actual amount of money is, we'd have to look through previous planning papers to find out what the 106 agreement was. It'll be on there. It'll be on there. But I'll see if I can find out for you, Dave. Okay.
Phenomenal. If there are no further comments, I will say I did a brief search, and regardless of the length, the word Kidsgrove appears in the report 7 times. The word Newcastle appears in the report 7 times, but that includes the heading of the report, and therefore Kidsgrove is overrepresented relative to its size. Disproportionate, of course, references to Nutton, 4 of those, because of course Nutton master planning is part of this process in this report. Thank you very much to members for your comments on that. That is the final substantive item. So item number 7 is the work programme. I'll open it up, but it will say the same thing it said last time, which is that we're now going to get neck deep into budget discussions. So our next meeting and the meeting after that will be agendas full of that sort of thing. Are there any additional items people would like to consider for the future work programme? No. In that case, we will conclude at that point. Item number 8 is public question time. No public questions have been received. And 9 is urgent business. No urgent business. The date of the next meeting, goodness me. I am looking at the right. It tells me the next meeting will be held on Monday, the 17th of December, 2018. So I'll see you all. I'll see you all a long time ago. If not, it will be in the new year. Have a great Christmas. If I don't see you before, that concludes the business of tonight's meeting. Thank you.